The concept of a woman pope, often referred to as Pope Joan, has been a subject of intrigue and controversy for centuries. The story, a blend of myth, legend, and historical debate, centers on a woman who supposedly disguised herself as a man and rose through the ecclesiastical ranks to become the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. The tale has captivated the imaginations of people since the Middle Ages and has been interpreted in various ways, from a cautionary tale about female ambition to a critique of the Church's patriarchal structures. Whether Pope Joan was a real historical figure or a fabricated story meant to serve a particular purpose remains a mystery. In this essay, we will explore the legend of Pope Joan, its origins, the historical context, and the ongoing debates surrounding her existence. The legend of Pope Joan. The story of Pope Joan first gained prominence in the 13th century through various chroniclers and texts. The most widely circulated version of the tale tells of a young woman born in Mainz, Germany, around the 9th century. According to the legend, Joan, displaying exceptional intelligence and curiosity, disguised herself as a man to gain access to education, a privilege denied to women at the time. Under the name Johannes Anglicus, she excelled in her studies, particularly in theology and philosophy. Joan's talents eventually led her to Rome, where she continued her studies and entered the church. She rose through the ranks, impressing her superiors with her knowledge and dedication. In the legend, her charisma and intellect were so remarkable that she was eventually elected as pope, serving under the guise of a man for several years. The tale takes a tragic turn when Joan, still disguised, becomes pregnant, either through an affair with a trusted companion or a member of her household. The pregnancy is hidden from everyone in the Vatican until she goes into labor during a procession. As the story goes, Joan gave birth in public, revealing her true identity as a woman. Some versions of the legend say she and the child were immediately executed by the enraged crowd, while others suggest she died in childbirth and was quietly removed from the historical record. The historical context. While the tale of Pope Joan is steeped in sensationalism, it is essential to consider the historical context in which it arose. The early Middle Ages were a period of great instability in Europe, characterized by frequent invasions, political fragmentation, and the collapse of centralized authority following the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Catholic Church, one of the few institutions that maintained continuity during this time, was not immune to corruption, intrigue, and political maneuvering. During the 9th and 10th centuries, the period in which Pope Joan supposedly lived, the papacy itself was often embroiled in scandal. Several popes during this time were accused of moral corruption, incompetence, and political manipulation. The era is sometimes referred to as the pornocracy or rule of the harlots, referring to the influence that powerful Roman noblewomen supposedly had over the papacy. This turbulent environment may have provided fertile ground for the emergence of the Pope Joan legend, as it reflects a time when the papacy was viewed with skepticism and criticism. Early sources and spread of the legend. The earliest known reference to Pope Joan appears in the writings of the Dominican monk Jean de Mailly, who included a brief mention of a female pope in his Chronica Universalis in the mid-13th century. However, the most influential account came from another Dominican, Martin of Opava, whose Chronicon Pontificum et Imperatorum, Chronicle of the Popes and Emperors, written around 1278, gave a more detailed version of the story. According to Martin, Pope Joan's papacy lasted for over 2 years, and she was succeeded by Pope Benedict III. He placed her in the 9th century, which lent an air of historical authenticity to the tale. The legend quickly spread throughout Europe and was included in numerous chronicles, histories, and even official church documents. By the 14th century, the story of Pope Joan had become a well-established part of European folklore, with many versions and embellishments. It was during this time that her name, Joan, or Joanna, became associated with the story, though earlier versions do not specify her name. One of the most significant moments in the spread of the Pope Joan legend was its inclusion in the Mirabilia Urbis Romae, Marvels of the City of Rome, a popular medieval guidebook for pilgrims visiting Rome. The book identified a specific location on the papal procession route where Joan supposedly gave birth, further cementing the tale's association with real places and events. Skepticism and denial. Despite its widespread popularity, the story of Pope Joan has always been met with skepticism. Early on, some church officials and historians questioned the validity of the tale, pointing out the lack of contemporary evidence and the inconsistencies in the timeline. The Vatican itself has long maintained that the story is a fabrication, and no official church records acknowledge the existence of a female pope. One of the most prominent critics of the Pope Joan legend was the 16th century historian and Protestant reformer David Blondel, who conducted a thorough investigation into the tale's origins. Blondel concluded that the story was a myth, likely invented to discredit the papacy during a time of anti-papal sentiment in medieval Europe. His work was influential in debunking the legend, and many subsequent historians have followed his lead. In modern times, most historians agree that the story of Pope Joan is a legend rather than historical fact. No contemporary records from the 9th century mention her, and the chronological inconsistencies in the various versions of the tale make it unlikely that such a figure could have existed without leaving more substantial evidence behind. Interpretations and symbolism. While the existence of Pope Joan is highly doubtful, the legend itself holds significant symbolic meaning. Over the centuries, the story has been interpreted in various ways, often reflecting the concerns and anxieties of the societies in which it circulated. For medieval audiences, the story of Pope Joan may have served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of female ambition and the subversion of traditional gender roles. In a deeply patriarchal society, the idea of a woman infiltrating the highest echelons of power, only to be undone by her biological nature, could be seen as a warning against allowing women into positions of authority. At the same time, the tale of Pope Joan has also been interpreted as a critique of the Catholic Church and its structures of power. In this view, the legend reflects a deeper unease with the Church's moral authority and the perceived corruption of the papacy during the Middle Ages. The fact that a woman could rise to the papacy undetected might symbolize the instability and moral decay within the institution itself. In more recent times, the story of Pope Joan has been reclaimed by feminist scholars and writers as a symbol of female empowerment and resistance. For some, Joan represents a figure who defied the strict gender norms of her time, pursuing education and power in a male-dominated society. Her tragic downfall can be seen as a reflection of the broader struggles that women have faced throughout history in their fight for equality and recognition. The story of Pope Joan remains one of the most enduring and fascinating legends in the history of the Catholic Church. Whether she was a real historical figure or a product of medieval imagination, her tale has sparked debates about gender, power, and authority for centuries. While most historians agree that Pope Joan is likely a myth, the legend continues to captivate audiences and inspire interpretations across various fields of study. Ultimately, the legacy of Pope Joan speaks to the enduring power of storytelling in shaping our understanding of history and the human experience.